All right, so today I got to talk a little bit more about something that Thomas Sowell has brought up again. Now, he says, what do you call it when someone takes someone else's money openly by force? Robbery. What do you call it when a politician takes someone else's money in taxes and gives it to someone who is more likely to vote for him? Social justice. Now, again, this is the problem that the problem. I mean, the first problem being is that it doesn't matter um, what good cause or whatever garbage you think that the money that people that the government takes from people and uses it for whatever. It doesn't matter what the cause is. It's fundamentally immoral because you're not taking it. You're forcing people to give it to them, right? And here's the big problem: is that if you're if it's fundamentally a good thing and the right thing to do, then you shouldn't have to force people to do it. You shouldn't have to force people to do it. Now, almost everybody agrees that we should help out the poor. The problem is that the solution that most of these politicians come up with nowadays is that because they mainly only care about power on both sides, and they rather than actually appealing to real change and real actually helping people, they just go to people and be like, yeah, if you vote for us, we're going to give you free stuff. And how do they get that money? They take it from other people. And that's the problem too, is that if it was fundamentally the right thing to do, then you shouldn't have to force people to give it to you. And that's the problem too. And this is the other problem with the left too, is that, and this is exclusive to the left, not as much right wing politicians, but in that the left believes that poor people are too stupid to be smart with money. Therefore, we have to take money from people with more money and give it to them. And they believe that people with more money are too selfish to help out other people. So again, the left fundamentally believes that everybody is naturally bad. Everybody's naturally bad because if everybody was naturally good, or if whether or not people were good or bad was driven by incentive, then none of their policies would make sense. The only way their policies make sense is if everybody naturally does the wrong thing. And that's the other problem too, is that the middle class largely get completely screwed over because the middle class are screwed over by the fact that to give away a lot of this free stuff, oftentimes, um, because the amount of free stuff that's been given away, there's no possible way to tax people enough to pay for it. Like again, this is another fundamental flaw of the left, is that they think, oh, if we just tax corporations more, or just tax the rich a little bit more, that we can have all the free stuff we want. But the reality is that that's not even close to being true. Uh, if the taxes on the top 1% were doubled, it wouldn't. I think it would pay for the national budget for an extra like 2 or 3 months. Like it's nothing. Like the national, but again, like when you look at Canada and the states now, because of the whole stupid virus situation, is that um, the governments are literally spending, um, as far as the amount of government services that are provided, they're borrowing more money to use for government services than they're actually generating in revenue through taxes and whatever. So that's one of the many problems. Like the main problem with this is that it's not sustainable. And the problem and the only argument that people have against the argument of, clawing things back is, oh, the poor are going to suffer and people will well, and they're right, but what they're completely wrong about is the amount of pain and suffering that's going to happen because of ignoring it and just kicking the can down the road is going to be far worse than having a little bit of pain and suffering now. It's like when you have a problem in your personal life, um, ignoring the problem only makes it worse. You have to deal with it now or it will only get worse. And that is the problem with all these policies, is rather than admit, hey, just literally paying people to be poor and paying people not to work isn't a good long-term strategy. We need to come up with something else. And the problem with that, I mean, the other big problem with that too, is that no politician would ever get elected. I don't even think a right-wing politician would, by telling people that we need to claw back some of these policies. It's just not going to happen. So that is one of the many problems too, is that there's no incentive for the politicians to do it either. So that is again one of the other many problems. But the main thing to point out here, like I said to start it out, is that um, it doesn't matter what you think the money's going towards. Taxing people, especially taxing people excessively, and especially taxing people like insane amounts more than the next person, is incredibly immoral. It's incredibly immoral because it's different sets of rules for different sets of people. And this is the problem too, is that 99.9% of people believe in a system like this. The problem, what they don't realize, is that you're justifying a system that has different sets of rules for different sets of people. And that these are the same people that are shocked and appalled when Justin Trudeau and Bill Morneau and all these guys are uh, laundering money back to themselves a lot of times through charities, taxpayer money. They're shocked and appalled when Jason Kenney gives money to his oil buddies and all this kind of stuff. But yet you're supporting a system that has a double standard by definition. You've defended the double standard this entire time. So you have no right to be shocked and appalled and to complain when said double standard is exposed and emerges. Like, you have no right to complain. So this is the thing about this kind of stuff, is that we can either tax everybody the same, which is, I still think, is not the right way to go about it, but at the very least you're doing it the same, or you can have a system where there's massive gaps and all this. I mean, this is the other thing too, that even if you want to make that argument too, like, why do people who are healthy not get tax breaks? I mean, someone who's incredibly, I mean, a single mother who's incredibly unhealthy literally is probably costing the system probably $5 to $10 million. I mean, when you add up all the stuff that's going to happen from the negative ramifications from their kids, probably $5 to $10 million, going to cost the system that much. When you have another guy who's making $1 million a year who costs the system next to nothing, why is there such a gap there? That doesn't make any sense. And that the problem too is that they're like, oh, you compassion, we got to help the poor, and the problem is that where they fundamentally go wrong. I mean, number one, it's just flat out immoral. But even if you want to accept the idea of always helping the poor and all that garbage, um, they don't care about creating any incentive whatsoever for people to be healthy, for people to produce, rather than for people to be net positives in society rather than net negatives. Nothing in any of their policy positions takes, they don't care about that whatsoever. And that the problem is that when you don't care about that, well, guess what happens? You get more people who are net negatives, and that's the problem too. And that's not the best way of putting it. That's just how I'm putting it because it's an easy way of understanding it. Is that you have people who are taking more out of the system than they're putting in, and that's one of the many problems too. And the other thing too is that taking money from the rich doesn't contribute any more to the economy. It doesn't. Because what would happen if you tax a rich person less? What do they? And this is the only way that the left wing position makes sense either. Is that the only way that it would make sense is if they literally get all that money in cash and hide it under their bed or in a safe or something. But who actually does that anymore? Like, who actually does that? Nobody does that. And what they would do is, okay, well, what they would do is, okay, well, they would, buy another car, which again employs people, which gives people jobs. They would buy another house, that employs people as well. They would put that money in the bank. Okay, what would the bank do with the money? They would loan it out to poor people so they can pay their bills and start businesses and stuff. So again, taxing people more doesn't do anything more to help the economy than taxing people less. It's literally the same thing. And the other thing too, I would argue, is that it's even worse because the government has no way of knowing of knowing where the demand is. Like, how does the government know? I mean, central planners are famous for doing a terrible job running economies because there's no price signal. There's none of that kind of stuff. When you tax someone less, they spend money on things that are in high demand, which helps the economy more than a central planner being like, hey, I'm just going to hire someone we're going to build a park or we're going to build another school. Like, what if there's no demand for the school? What if there's no demand for the park? And that's the problem. Um, So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last few things, check me out on Twitter, Parlay, and BitChute. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there. Make sure you follow me on those platforms as well if you haven't already.